for the week of November 12th. I am Chris Barron, and I am happy to be back with you this week. For those of you who follow me on Twitter, you know about my bizarre and inexplicable obsession with all things Tyler Kennedy. I admit this was a more fun obsession when Tyler Kennedy was playing for the Pittsburgh Penguins. But for those who are actually watching Chris's Corner and paying close attention every week, each week there is a sometimes subtle, sometimes not so subtle, either reference or picture or something about Tyler Kennedy worked into it. This week I'm working in probably my most favorite Tyler Kennedy picture, except for those bootleg naked pictures I have of TK on my computer, but I digress. That picture, of course, being the signed Tyler Kennedy Stanley Cup picture, which is looking over my shoulder, which stares down at me every day here in my lovely windowless office on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. Anyways, now that we've dispensed with my Tyler Kennedy moment for this week, I wanted to bring you a very special public service announcement. This is Movember, a no-shave November for some of us, Movember, no-shave November, same difference. And it's a great time for those of us who care about issues surrounding men's health, particularly men's cancers, to raise awareness of things like prostate cancer. And also, at the same time, raise some money and get to grow some really wicked cool facial hair. But this public service announcement is for all of the guys out there participating in Movember or participating in No Shave November. And here's that public service announcement. Neck beards are not good. No matter what happens this month, there is absolutely no reason for any guy out there to grow a neck beard. I promise you, your girlfriend won't like it, your wife won't like it, and society will be a worse place for you having a neck beard. So, here at Chris's Corner, we encourage you, grow some wicked cool facial hair, raise some awareness, raise some money from Movember, but don't do the neck beard. Alright, so on to the Pens. Last week we didn't talk much about the Pens, and quite frankly, this week I don't know exactly what to say. After having watched the last two Pens losses, it feels a little bit like this team did at points last year. It seems that this team, quite frankly, is only going to go as far as the stars on this team are going to take it. And I guess we should have known that coming into this year. I mean, look, we're dealing with a lower salary cap that forced the Pens and teams all across the league to make some really tough decisions. Essentially, we have the nucleus of the team pre-trade deadline from last year, with the exception of the addition of Rob Scuderi, who's obviously out injured, that is back this year. And look, that's nothing to sneeze at. I mean, we're talking about having the greatest player on the planet when he's healthy in Sidney Crosby. Sidney Crosby, Robinhood. We're talking about having one of the second or third other greatest players on the planet in Evgeny Malkin. We're talking about, you know, one of the best offensive defensemen in Chris Letang, despite all his defensive shortcomings. We're talking about a goaltender who has won a Stanley Cup, who at times has looked amazing this year in Marc-Andre Fleury. But beyond that, quite frankly, this is a team that's got a lot of problems with depth and a lot of problems that simply weren't able to be solved in the offseason. Look, last year Shiro brought in pieces like Morrow and like Iggy, and we had people like my boy Tyler Kennedy here. And we saw during the offseason that it was about making the investment in our star players to keep them locked in long term. I mean, we've got a core of players who are locked into long-term contracts: Malkin, Neal, Letang, Marc-Andre Fleury, Sidney Crosby, all locked into long-term contracts, which are great. And by the way, next year, when the cap goes up dramatically, the Pens are going to be in great position. But the downside of having made the decision to make that investment in locking up this young core is it has tied our hands. Quite frankly, we've got some guys who are out there playing on the third or fourth line who shouldn't even be in the NHL at this point. And for all of the great things that I can say about Ray Shero, and it's hard really to say something negative about somebody who is, quite frankly, one of the best, if not the best executive in all of the NHL, is that, despite having had some amazing draft classes that have produced some young defensemen that we've been able to trade away to bring in pieces, and some young defensemen like Olli Maatta who are actually making an impact now, and some more that are in the pipeline, when it comes to forwards, quite frankly, the cupboard is pretty bare. I mean, obviously, we've had Beau Bennett move up through the system, and Beau Bennett looks like he's a guy who's going to stick around and be an important part of the Pens for a long time to come. But beyond Beau, there's just not a whole lot there. And the problem for the Pens this year is going to be deciding what pieces are we willing to move, what young pieces are we willing to move at the trade deadline to make an impact on our third and fourth line. Because I'm telling you, as this team is constructed right now, this is not a Stanley Cup team without some additions. Yeah, and I know people have said, I've had this debate with folks on Twitter, but I'm over rental players. Well, I'm telling you right now, this team is going to need rental players. The players that are here on our third and fourth line are simply not good enough for this team to win a Stanley Cup. This team is only going to go as far as currently constructed as Malkin and Crosby are going to take it. Now, that's going to be a long way. We're not talking about a team that's not going to make the playoffs. We're not talking about a team that's going to get eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. But you're not going to win a long Stanley Cup run. You're not going to make it through the playoffs based on two lines or two lines and one guy. We're not going to make it there just with Marc-Andre Fleury in net. And the fact is we've seen that the limited exposure we've had to Zatkoff this year hasn't been great, and the fact that we've had limited exposure to Zatkoff makes it clear that Bylsma doesn't have a whole lot of faith in him. So the question is what is there that we're going to be able to move? We still do have some young puck-moving defensemen making their way up through the system that we could deal. But the question is going to be, at what point does Ray Shero pull that trigger, and who is going to be this year's Iginla? Who is going to be this year's Morrow? Because I'm telling you right now, it's going to happen. You may not be enamored of the idea of bringing in rental players, but if we're going to make the jump this year, if we're going to have an opportunity to raise the Stanley Cup, that's a reality we're going to have to accept. Next year, it's going to be a different story. Next year, we might not have to be talking about rental players because with a dramatically higher salary cap, I have all the faith in the world that the Pens are going to be able to go out and add the quality depth that we need to make a difference. But when you lose guys like Matt Cook, when you lose guys like Tyler Kennedy, when you lose guys like Jerome Iginla, I mean, look, Iggy was playing on the second line, which means that now you got to move somebody up to the third or fourth, from the third line to play on the second line. We had Morrow at points playing on the fourth line last year. The former captain of the Stars playing on the fourth line. I mean, right now we've got some guys who, like I said, quite frankly, they're one bus ride away from not playing in the NHL at all. And I think that the team as currently constructed is good enough to get us into the playoffs. But unless and until they make the moves to add some depth, some real depth here, we're not going to be a team that's going to win a Stanley Cup. And this has nothing to do with just a couple of losses. This is just a reflection of having watched the Penguins so far this season. The good news is for me, the good news is for every other Pen fan out there, you can have full faith that this ownership, this management understands that this team is built to win now. You don't want to miss a year where you've got a healthy Sidney Crosby, where you've got a healthy Evgeny Malkin, where you've got Chris Letang back. You don't want to miss one of these years. So I have complete and total faith that when it comes time, when we get to the trading deadline, no matter who those names who are out there that are looking to be moved, I have complete faith that Ray Shero will make the calls and make the deals that need to get done. And by the way, for all the folks who were talking about, I'm over rental players after what happened last year. Well, what happened last year? We got one series away from a Stanley Cup final. That's what happened last year. There's no shame in that. Do you like losing 4-0 in the Eastern Conference Championship? No. But the year before, we went out in the first round. So, at the end of the day, as I said, I don't think this is a team that's currently constructed to win a Stanley Cup without making additions. But the good news is we've got the folks in place, the management in place, the talent evaluation in place that I think will pull the trigger and make those additions. That's all I've got for this week, Chris's Corner. I look forward to chatting with you next week when hopefully I'll be able to talk about a couple of Penguins wins since I wasn't able to do that this week.